Hello there. It is Faith Talk Live. I'm Rick Probst.
And I'm Dan Ratcliffe.
If you're watching Facebook Live or YouTube Live, there on the screen is Ric, R-I-C, Cadle, Pastor Ric, a lead pastor of Wildwood Baptist Church in Ackworth, businessman turned pastor. And we want to hear the entire story. Ric, how are you?
I'm doing very well, Rick. Nice to see you and Dan.
Good to see you. You and I hooked up at one of our Thankful Thursday luncheons a couple of weeks ago, which you said you're still walking off the pizza that we brought out. So glad that we could fill you up. That's always a good thing. But it was good to hook up with you. And we said, we need to get you on the show and talk. So here you are.
Yes. Yeah, I appreciate that. We appreciate the station and you guys for bringing us lunch. Our staff really appreciated that.
Absolutely. Awesome. Do you know who nominated? Did you get down to the bottom of that? Because sometimes it's kind of it's anonymous. We found.
Yeah, we did a very thorough investigation, and it was Molly Fowler. She's a sweetheart. She's a new member here. You know, our church is not unlike a lot of churches. There's been a lot of transition in churches over the pandemic. Some people have moved on. New people have come for different reasons, mask protocols and all of those kinds of things. So the Fowlers are new to our church. They've been here just a year, and she was kind enough to nominate us, and you guys were kind enough to choose us. So again, we're very, very grateful for that.
We're so glad you're on the show. Dan spoke highly of you, and we just wanted to catch up with you. Now, you've been at Wildwood for how long now?
11 years. In fact, right now, my first sermon after I preached in view of a call was October 10th, but my starting date was October 1st. So it's kind of officially 11 years right now.
Awesome. And as Rick kind of mentioned earlier, you didn't start off in ministry right out of college. You started off as a businessman. Tell us how you went from radio to business to where you are now.
Yeah, you had mentioned, Rick, you wanted to hear the whole story. You really don't, because it's way too long for the time that we have today. But let me shorten it up and just fast forward to a time where I own my own corporation. My wife and I are running it. We have a business partner. This is an interesting side note. He is both a pastor and a lawyer. Some people ask how you can be both. He's just proved that that's impossible, but a wonderful, wonderful guy. So he and his wife and me and my wife started a company called Perk Incorporated. It was Phyllis, Earl, Rick, and Cindy Incorporated. And I was involved with business for several years, both in Pennsylvania and then also in Indiana, and started developed relationships with bankers. And the bankers actually said back in the day, you could borrow as much money as you wanted very, very easily if you had some credibility. And so the person that I was vice president for several years in Indiana gained me that credibility. And I was able to go to those bankers and say, hey, we're interested in buying businesses that are struggling. We've got some ideas about how we can turn them. Would you be interested in funding that? And several banks said yes. So we started that company, and I bought and sold small businesses. They weren't, big conglomerates. They were full service car washes. We had a couple ice cream stores. We had a couple donut shops. We had apartment buildings. And then we had a kids playland called Tumble Station. It was kind of like a Chuck E. Cheese. We had go-karts and putt-putt, and they were great times. And if I were God, I say this often because everyone's thankful that I'm not, but if I were God, if I wanted Rick in ministry, I would have had those businesses fail. And it's not like we didn't struggle. I mean, anyone who's done any kind of business, they understand there are good times and there are struggles. And we had plenty of those, of both of those in all of our businesses. But we were at a time where all 5 of the businesses that we owned at that time were profitable. And I looked at my wife and I said, I would have thought that the contentment and the satisfaction and the euphoria that came with achieving that goal would have been better and greater than what I was experiencing at that time. She had capped us at 5 businesses as our accountant. She said, listen, I don't want to do more than that. So if you want another one, you have to sell one that we have in order to move to the next one. And so all 5 were paying us, and they were doing well. And our protocol for a profitable business was 6 months of profit. It had to be a solid 6 months. If all 5 businesses were profitable all 6 months, and we said, okay, we've got 5 businesses that are doing well. If they're profitable for 3 years, you can sell them, and someone is interested in your business. If you've maintain a profit for 3 years, and we knew that as well. So you would have thought that the excitement and euphoria would have been greater at that time. It just was not there. And so we began to pray and ask God, what we were supposed to do. And we had this sense that it was ministry. It was where we experienced the greatest joy, and it really was where our hearts were. We were very involved in our church in Indiana and participated in all the activities. And I think I was at that time, I was the men's ministry director as a lay leader. And so we set a fleece. I wouldn't advise this to everybody. There are places in the Bible that says you can and that you shouldn't, but I did. I just didn't want to miss this. I never saw myself as a pastor. Growing up, I never said, hey, when I grow up, I'm going to be a pastor. Yeah. And I just never felt qualified. I didn't think that I had the kind of, temperament and devotion even to be a senior pastor or a pastor of any kind, much less a senior pastor. So we said, God, if you want me to be a pastor, would you send 2 people with credibility that tells me that I'm to be a pastor? And if you do that, then we will pursue that. And I kid you not, guys, 2 weeks after we prayed that prayer at a Bible study, one person shows up and says, this is the strangest thing, but I'm supposed to ask you to pray for me because you're my pastor. And I said, I'm not a pastor. And she said, I know, but I'm just supposed to ask you to pray for me because God has led me to tell you that you're my pastor. And I said, wow, this is amazing. The exact same evening, a guy comes to me and he overheard that conversation. He said, wait till you see this. And he opened his Bible. He had a piece of paper that he had written a note a year earlier. And he said, God had not released him to give it to me yet. And it said, Ric Cadle is supposed to be a pastor.
Wow.
So 2 in one night. And I called my wife. She was actually pregnant with our 3rd child. And so she couldn't be at the Bible study. And I said, you're not going to believe this. God has spoken. I'm going to go to seminary tomorrow and apply. And went to Southern Seminary, applied, had to have a referral at our church. So I went to our church and said, hey, I'm submitting my name for acceptance at Southern Seminary. Would you refer me? And the leaders of the church at that time said, listen, we've observed you. If you are called, we want to be part of the process. Why don't you come in to some training and you can sit under, they had 7 pastors at that time. You can sit under each one of the pastors. At the end of the year, if God continues to move in that direction, we'll license and ordain you. And that's what we did. And at the end of that year, they not only licensed and ordained me, but they invited me to come on staff. And
wow,
that's how the whole ministry thing began.
Man,
what a story.
What a story.
Love that.
That's amazing.
We're talking with Pastor Ric Cadle. He is the lead pastor there at Wildwood Baptist Church in Ackworth. You had mentioned earlier about just the transitioning of the churches just really in every little community or every big community of what's going on. Do you think business at all / ministry prepared you for what you'd face over the last, 18 months?
You never know those things. Hindsight's 20/20, as they say. When I came to Wildwood, the search team was not aware of where the church was financially. Quite frankly, very few people, almost no one knew that the church was struggling financially. And so I didn't know and wasn't told. And I wasn't told because the people who were in the know didn't know. There were really 2 people. One had left the church and the other was the finance person. So first day here in the office that I'm sharing with you from right now, the finance director comes in and says, okay, which of these bills do you want to pay? And I said, well, I want to pay all of them that are due. And she said, well, we haven't done that in years. Wildwood's not in a financial situation to do that. And you have to tell me what ones you want to pay. Then you and I, or just I, have to call the businesses that we're not going to be able to pay and say, hey, we'll be paying you later. We just don't have the funds to do that. And so to answer your question very directly, I didn't realize that's what God was doing, but it was exactly what he did. And we had an opportunity to, the bank actually called us, and we owed at that time, guys, somewhere around $3.5 million. And the bank said, we're probably going to pull the loan. New pastor, churches are high risk. We're probably not going to be able to hold this loan for you. And I was able to tell them, hey, contact some of the bankers in Indiana. And you'll hear a little bit about my background, what I've done, and hang with us. We're going to be fine. God's not going to leave me here to close it up, I don't think. And so God really did some amazing things here. But that background allowed me, quite frankly, to have kind of that steadfast faith to stand in front of our people and say, hey, we're in a tough time right now, but God's God's going to deliver us through this and see us through this tough time. And he did exactly that. So yes, I think that background training really kind of showed me what God can do through an individual when you seek him first and foremost, but then also when you apply some really simple, practical business principles to not spending more than you bring in and those kind of things that kind of turn things around here.
Wow.
Pastor Ric Cadle from Wildwood Baptist Church in Ackworth. Real quick, Rick, before we run out of time here, tell us about some of the exciting things you guys are doing there at Wildwood and things you got coming up.
Yeah, we live in an area where there's so many great churches, and I could take the rest of the short time that we have naming them, and you guys know them, and people in our area know them. So if someone were to say, well, why would I go to Wildwood when I've got all these great churches in Georgia, North Georgia? The answer would be relationship. I think the thing that I see that's different here at Wildwood than any other place is the way that the people of God kind of bond together and support one another. I've watched people come and go, and that's just a normal flow of the church. People worry about those things and they get concerned. Listen, there are so many great places to go. If God's leading you somewhere else, you need to go there. And if God has a call in your life, on your life in regards to something that another church does, go to that church and serve in that area. He's equipped you to do that. He's given you the spiritual gifts to do that. So we shouldn't bemoan that. We should celebrate that. But the problem is, and we all know this, that if more leave that come in, then we're in trouble. The thing that has stabilized Wildwood over the years has been the development of relationships. And so these people really do life together. They enjoy not only attending church together on Sunday mornings and Wednesday nights, but they enjoy doing things throughout the week together. And they have an outreach focus. They like taking their individual, we call our Sunday school classes fusion, but they like taking their individual fusion classes and going out and serving in the community together. They find great joy in that. It gives us good exposure. Obviously, there's a benefit to that, but they feel good about what they're doing as individual people and classes, and we equip them to do that. We find places where we can go and help, whether it be in our local schools or assisting our providing meals for our civil servants or whatever the case may be. We want to be out there and involved and engaged, and we do that as the body of Christ together. So that's what makes Wildwood unique, in my opinion, is the close relationships that develop when you attend Wildwood Baptist Church.
Wow, I love that. Pastor Ric Cadle, it is Wildwood Baptist Church in Ackworth, and it's wildwoodbaptistchurch.org. We've run out of time, but we would both love to talk to you in December. If you will, we'll just get you on the show, and we'd like to catch up with you and see what's coming up for 2022. So again, check out the church. We appreciate you. Got to take a break. I'm Rick Probst.
And I'm Dan Ratcliffe.
This is Faith Talk Live.